All right, sorry for the technical difficulties here. We are starting a little bit late, a couple minutes after the hour, but we have a lot to talk about. So, without further ado, let's get into. We have a new product I just got, which we'll get into in a second. We have Apple's earnings, which just came out. And then we also have just some good questions to get through, other topics. So, we do not have a guest tonight. There is no guest. So hopefully you can hear me okay. Everything's coming through. Hello, buddy. Brian. Fish Ventura. Nice to see you here. Good to hear everything's working. Greetings from Hilton Head. That's good. The snow is gone, Saul. Snow is gone from here too. We actually got rain tonight. Yeah, no guests, in part because, like, man, my life the past couple days, I've just been kind of away from YouTube, dealing with everything else in my life. Everything's fine and good, just busy. And so now, like, tonight, coming back to YouTube since the first time since Tuesday night. I knew Tuesday night, like, I needed to record my next video on Tuesday night because I would not have any time until I got around to tonight for the live stream. So working on the next video. But speaking of the video, probably after that, depending on how things go, I got a Ubiquiti UNAS Pro and set it up. So I would love to show you. I just set it up. Well, I guess this was technically a YouTube thing. I set it up last night. But yeah, I have a lot to say in the video, a lot of things, opinions and thoughts on it, of course. Shocking that I would have thoughts on it. But the thing with the UNAS Pro that really struck me right out of the box is just how heavy it is. The UPS shipment, I think, had it weighing something like 24 or 25 pounds, and that's without any drives. And most of that is the weight of the unit that goes in the rack. Of course, there's the cardboard and some stuff. But if you plan to get a UNAS Pro or plan to set it up, consider getting help from someone else as you mount it on your rack, and also do it without the drives inside, because yeah, it's very tricky to get it to, like, sit there while you can get the screws in. It's a 2 unit height rack item, so it's big. But yeah, it's exciting to see Ubiquiti get into the space, kind of trying to compete with Synology and other NAS. Ugreen's another player in that space, and definitely I think NAS storage is a cool part of a smart home, and there's a lot of things you can do with it. Clearly, a lot of you guys were interested in my Synology video, so with that, we get to go check out the Ubiquiti UNAS Pro as well, which, thanks to your support of the channel, I purchased. They didn't. I don't have any inside contacts at Ubiquiti. If someone at Ubiquiti is ever watching my content, please, I'd love to be more in touch with you guys and stay in sync. But yeah, cool product, and more coming on my channel soon on the Ubiquiti UNAS Pro, which is, as I mentioned, their sort of new network attached storage. We can pull it up here so you can see what I'm talking about, and then I'll get to some of you guys in the chat. Oh no, now my scenes are gone. What happened? My scenes are gone. Oh well. I'll figure out. Okay. So while I'm trying to figure out my technical stuff, I did want to also mention guest of last week's stream, who I see in the chat here, George. Good to see you this evening. Good news that you shared, George, on your social media earlier today. That sounds like the test came back clear, so you don't have any lurking cancer or new cancer returning. So, having more years being cancer free, that's really exciting. So, congratulations, George, and good to hear that. So, and there'll be more guests on the live streams here in the future. It was really fun having George on last week. I certainly had a lot of fun with it, but yeah, it's it's a lot of overhead to schedule and figure out like all the details of. So I don't know if I'll be doing it every live stream. Some of the live streams I think will still be me solo, flying solo. But let's see if I can fix this issue with my scenes here. Aha, here we go. So here is the Ubiquiti UNAS Pro. So this is the new rack. It's very big. Yeah, a lot more to talk about there, but just wanted to give you guys a heads up that it was out of stock for a long time, and now it's back in stock. It's still in stock. I ordered it last week. So keep that in mind if you're interested in it. Of course, I'll have a video with my thoughts on it coming in the not too distant future. So if you want to stay tuned for that. But yeah, the UNAS Pro. So enough on that. We also have Apple's earnings to talk about. They just had their earnings call, and Six Colors, great blog that covers all things Apple. Jason Snell and Dan Morin and team over there are amazing. Long time folks that have been covering Apple for a long time. And I always love their earnings charts they do for Apple earnings. And it's great to see the current quarter in comparison to last year, the same quarter, and then also just historically. So profit is record profit, record revenue, $124.3 billion in profit in one quarter, or in revenue, in 1 quarter. I mean, it's crazy to think of that amount of money, like $124.3 billion in 1 quarter. And then $36.3 billion in profit. The services just keeps growing. You see Apple TV Plus and, iCloud Plus, HomeKit Secure Video, of course, being part of that in a way, and some little part of that is HomeKit Secure Video. And I always find this chart interesting of the percentage of revenue by product line and how the iPhone has this cyclical peak where it gets more of the revenue. So that's always, and you can see that as well, sort of reflected in this product chart versus services for the percentage of revenue. Or percentage, in this case, is profit with this chart. But the Mac revenue's up a little bit compared to other quarters, $9 billion. So I listened to some of the immediate coverage after the earnings call. Didn't seem like too many revelations in terms of things that Apple executives said that were newsworthy too much, especially in the smart home space. But obviously, it's all the rumors are still pointing to Apple has a lot planned in the smart home in 2025. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm sure you are too. But that's Apple's earnings. So holiday quarter, I don't know if I'll cover Apple's earnings all the time. I certainly haven't in the past, but holiday quarter is always a big deal. It's the biggest quarter of the year for Apple. It's why they start their fiscal year with that quarter. But let's see, go back to my scenes. Oh, hold on. Technical difficulties tonight. Speaking of technical difficulties, that podcast episode went live. George's, I think, is coming soon, like next week. But so that was fun. And I posted a short of my favorite Apple products of all time from that, which was great. Fun to put together. Okay, so James, you have going back to the NAS discussion earlier, James has 2 QNAPs, otherwise be in the market for one. Understandable, you already covered. Good evening, William. Nice to see you here. Yeah, some great regulars here. Garrence, man, you're a little colder than us. We're warm right now, and it's 40 something here. Yes, 18 months cancer free. That's really cool, George. And question. Okay, here's a good. Okay, so there's already some good answers in the chat as usual. There's a lot of you guys who tuned into this stream live are super power users of Apple and smart home stuff. But Jimmy has a good question here. Lutron Caseta users, if installing to a three-way switch, do you need to install Lutron Diva on each side of the switch for it to work, or can you just install one of the three-way switches? So, so I've not done a dumb switch like William has here. One on the dumb side. Okay, you need a jumper wire. Yes, you need to use the jumper wire, which comes with the dimmer. Okay. What I've done for my three-way switches from Lutron is either one of two things. So the easy route, but maybe not the, I guess you could say, like, it's kind of a hack, but it's certainly the easiest route, is just to close off the other end of the three-way circuit. And Lutron gives you nice wiring diagrams with your Diva dimmer on how to do this. And then put a Lutron Pico remote. And they have the Pico paddle remotes now that match the appearance of the Diva dimmer. And so you can have that on the other side. And then you get the consistent look between the two switches. And I find that control to work pretty well. The other option is Lutron has an accessory switch. So Lutron's accessory switches are these like special switches or dimmer. They pair with a Claro switch or a Diva dimmer, and they go on the other end of a three-way. But you can also use, I forget the limit, but it's a very high number of them if you want to do a smart wired four-way, which is more than two switches. So Lutron accessory switches, it's kind of a niche product. Lutron tells me it's more for like their pro installers, but I think it's a really nice option to put on the other end of your three-way switch, because it works in the circuit as just a dumb switch. Now, of course, a Pico remote pairs directly to the Diva dimmer, so it's going to work without your smart home around it, right? Your Caseta hub goes away or things, your Pico remote's still going to be able to control your lights. So the light switches will still work. I just like the fact that the accessory switch is then hardwired into that scenario. And it's also nice that Lutron provides that option if you're looking to go certainly with more than two dimmer switches in one setup for a four-way switch. So things to consider with Lutron if you're looking to make that three-way switch work. The other thing I'd always say with wiring home lights is just plan more time than you need. But, best case, worst case, you finish it early and you don't need to use that extra time. But I always find there's going to be random things that come up. It's just tough to get the wires back in the box. Maybe you mix something up the first time you try it. It's, it's not brain surgery, but it's also, especially three-way switches and four-way switches, it can get kind of tricky if you don't do it a lot. And certainly, like, every time I come back to doing one of those, it's just like, oh, how do I do this again? And refreshing my memory. So watch tutorials from Lutron, look at their wiring diagrams, and just take your time. And it can be really nice to get to the other side, and then you have that smart three-way dimmer or switch, depending on what you're doing. But that's my thoughts on that. And yeah, I've never tried Williams' concept of doing the three-way with Lutron with the dumb switch on the other side, or non-smart switch. But I guess that should work. I think there are plenty of other smart switches, and especially switches, not as many dimmers, but that do also support a non-smart switch on the other end. For example, Eve's smart switch supports a non-smart switch on the other end of a three-way setup. So I also had another, as long as we're on a question, I'm going to get to another question that I had come in. You can ask questions in advance, ericw.org/live. And there was some time where I had an issue with some of the email processing for that. So I'm kind of getting through a backlog of questions that people asked. This one I think is a really good topic from December viewer Kendall asked, if you're buying an Aqara hub today, would you go with the M3 or a different Aqara hub? Of course, what Kendall mentioned in their question as well is just that myself and other YouTubers, we weren't too excited about the M3 hub when it first came out. It wasn't that much of a hit product, at least in our eyes, at least in my eyes. And I think it was in part because Aqara was trying to do a lot of things with the M3 hub. It was a very ambitious product. And some of those things were a little unreliable at first. And I also think what I realized later on after that review is I really think the Aqara M3 hub is designed to be a Matter hub. Yes, it can work via the Apple Home integration, but I found I got a lot better results from the M3 hub once I added it to my Apple Home as a Matter hub. And I mentioned this in, I forget, one of my videos in the fall at some point. I revisited this topic a little bit, but I would say at this point, if you're watching this stream, you're into smart home tech, and you can swing the price of the M3 hub, go with that. I am excited for Aqara to release this new I think it's the M100S hub that they announced at CES. It's basically like the way I was calling it to the car rep I was going through the booth with is a baby M3 hub, because it doesn't have all of the features of the M3 hub, but it has a lot of the newer Matter features. I think it even has like a Thread radio in it. It's going to be a lot less expensive too. So if you're not looking to run tons of your home on Aqara stuff and you're just kind of looking to dip your toe into some of the hub-based stuff, of course, it does all the Zigbee sensors and stuff. That should be an interesting option when it comes out. Yes, it's the M100 hub is their new hub. So, did the Google, M100. Okay, cool. So that would be what you'd want to go with if you want to do kind of a lower cost option, but unfortunately it's not out right now. So I would, at this point, go with the M3 hub, and it's going to, the M100 is obviously not replacing the M3 hub. It's just a lower cost alternative. So we talked about Apple's earnings. We talked about the UNES Pro. Got to some questions. Hey, Edgar's Home Tech. Sorry. Nice to see you here. Saw a bunch of you guys also over on Shane Watley's stream yesterday afternoon. I had a chance to tune into that for a little bit. So that was great until I was using my computer at the office, at the co-working space where I go, and I kicked my plug on the floor, and then a bunch of my stuff on my desk just like shut off. So then I quickly dropped off the stream and a bunch of other things because my everything sort of shut down, went to sleep. So whoops. Thankfully I don't have that here. So good morning from the Philippines. Wow, Art, thanks for tuning in. Good to see you again. It's fun to have folks from all over the world tuning in here. Yeah, good to see everybody here. Oh, yes, this is an interesting question from Ejani. So what's the purpose of listing devices under settings, general Matter accessories? Is this related to data being stored on Keychain? What Matter data is stored in Keychain? I haven't dived into all the technical details of this, but that's been my understanding, Ejani, is that basically if you go to your settings, you can see the different Matter devices your iPhone is paired with. And those, from what I can tell, are the devices where Apple Home is the primary controller, right? So you get the device, you add it with Matter to your Apple Home, and then it gets put in a Keychain. Now, Apple does have a developer talk. I watched it a while ago. It's in 2021, I think it was, where they came out with the HomeKit framework support for Matter. And I think this might go into more details of that. But yeah, it's basically, storing some of the keys, from my understanding, for secure communication between your home and that device. because of course there's a key exchange that goes on when you scan the code and set up the device. And as well when you do multi-admin, but I don't remember all the details for multi-admin, meaning like you can then go into the home settings of your device in Apple Home, choose to add it to another ecosystem, and then it creates a Matter code for that and adds it in there. So, you know, and I've mentioned this a few different places, but this might be a good time to mention it here. Like, Snazzy Labs, Quinn Nelson made a really good video, kind of commentary on the current state of smart home stuff. And what he made it really sound like is that, you know, all these Matter isn't living up to what it could be because it doesn't let you just quickly and easily switch smart home platforms. And that he's had all the success by putting Home Assistant at the center of his smart home. And that just solves all its problems, basically. And I know I'm oversimplifying his video a little bit, and it's a very good video. And I imagine most of you guys watching this stream have probably seen it by now. But with that, I disagree with a lot of that premise. I think that, first of all, I think Matter is still designed in a way where you really need to pick your platform. These platform vendors are not going to support a world where you can just switch between all of them all the time, willy-nilly, just depending on your mood. And that's just not what Matter's designed for. Matter's meant so that a device manufacturer can support all these different ecosystems out of the box. And it's meant so that an ecosystem like Home Assistant or Homey Pro or something else can be at a level field with Apple and Google and these tech giants, right? Because they just have to support being a Matter controller, and then they can be a valid Matter platform for you to add devices to. And I think that's amazing. It's an amazing part of what Matter enables for Apple Home. But just keep that in mind, or not for Apple Home, for just for Home Assistant and Homey Pro and all those additional platforms that I'm sure we'll see a lot of innovation there over the years. But if you're putting Home Assistant at the center of your home, it's kind of, I think, still in a state where you're signing yourself up for a labor of love. Like there's a lot of power it unlocks. There's a lot of capabilities. It's a really cool system, but I think Shane was talking about it in his live stream yesterday, and I agree. It's just like, I don't enjoy using Home Assistant a ton. It's incredibly powerful, but to me, it's just not as fun. And that there's nothing, I don't think, wrong with Home Assistant in that case. And I think there are plenty of people who do find it fun. Clearly, there's a lot of folks on YouTube and everywhere on the internet talking about it. I love the joke. I think I forget who made the joke initially. I've heard it on Accidental Tech Podcasts and some other places, but just like, how once you start using Home Assistant, it's kind of like CrossFit or other things in your life. Like you just start talking about it to all your friends because you just think it's the most amazing thing ever. Which it's a funny analogy for sure. But yeah, I just think pick a smart home platform to be your primary smart home platform where you do most of your stuff and you have most of your automations and your scenes and your room names. I would love to see room names and accessory names shared between Matter, but I think there are probably a lot of confusing edge cases there where things don't quite line up that might become more confusing or difficult for users than it sounds like on the surface, right? You think like, oh yeah, it's just a string of a user's room name. We'll just share that, no problem. And it sounds easy on the surface, but if you've used systems like Philips Hue or Aqara or Lutron, all of those have ways to define room names, and of course, they're room names in Apple Home. And I think Nanoleaf also is this way to a certain extent. And they all have different features where you can sync your room names and accessory names from one to the other, right? So you can say in those apps, I want all my room names and accessory names from Apple Home to go over to Philips Hue, or the vice versa. And I found those features to not always produce the results that I want, or be kind of confusing to go through the wizard where then, I forget which one it was, and this was a while ago, but I clicked the wrong button and I basically ended up taking all of my room names and accessory names that were wrong in one of these apps and then renaming all my Apple Home stuff to be in the wrong room and the wrong room names. And, in one app, you might call it living room because that's what the prompt and the setup does. But in another app, you call it family room. And are those equivalent or not? For some homes, that might be the same thing. It might not be in other homes. So I think there's just a lot of hard user experience problems for Matter platform vendors to cross by simply saying, oh, we're just going to share the room names and accessory names. Maybe there'd be some way where you could see what other platforms are calling it and use it as a platform as you want to, right? So like, but it wouldn't necessarily be that, oh, because I named this the family room in Matter platform A, then automatically it's going to be the family room in Matter platform B. I think that kind of loop would get really confusing for people and would be difficult for a lot of these software vendors to implement consistently. So I don't know, just a rant over, but it's like some thoughts have been brewing in my head about all of this stuff about rooms and accessories and Matter. And I don't think it would be as straightforward to build out as it might seem on the surface. Oh, cool. Edgar, I'll have to go check that out. Thanks, Art, for shouting out Edgar's Home Tech has a good FP2 video. I think I missed that. No, it is not possible to share. Yeah, it's a WWDC 2021 session. I think it was on What's New in HomeKit or What's New in HomeKit and Matter, something like that. Johnny, you can check out. But yeah, you cannot share a Matter device between two different Apple homes unless maybe there's some way you could somehow do it through a third-party unofficial bridge, like let's say Home Assistant, and then maybe expose it to both. But I think even then, that Home Assistant instance would have to appear as two different HomeKit codes in order to make that appear as different products, I think. So, yeah, that's another great feature request, Brian. I would love to see dynamic lighting effects. There's a lot of great, as you're mentioning here, Nanoleaf, Aqara, Twinkly. I'd put Govee in there too, although Govee isn't as an active player in Apple Home per se. They're more just strictly Matter. But yeah, it'd be nice to have a way. I think the easiest way would be somehow that like these Matter devices could expose a property or whatever it's called in various ecosystems, like in HomeKit, it might be a characteristic that's like a custom name, right? So it's like a custom characteristic with a custom name that you somehow know to show as whatever the name of the lighting effect is you gave it in that app. Maybe it's some preset lighting effect they have. And you could somehow then just say like exposed to Matter, like check the box or whatever. And then other systems that could see that and compatible with it, would be able to see it. And that's also the nice thing too with like Matter multi-admin, right? Like maybe Home Assistant isn't the center of your smart home, but like I bet Home Assistant would be one of those Matter systems that would jump on that new standard right away. And then you could multi-admin your lights from Apple Home into Home Assistant, and then you can control the scene with Home Assistant and maybe create some kind of way to control it from physical controls, or then Apple Home, something in Apple Home, then triggering something in Home Assistant that changes those lights. And of course, I'd imagine if that really becomes a thing, of course, Apple and Amazon and other folks will catch up to doing that too. But yeah. Hey, Brian, no worries on being late. I started 2 minutes late tonight too. So had trouble getting everything going here. And I should have given myself more time to set up my camera and get it all connected. But anyways, exploring the winter ice on the lakeshore. Wow, that's cool. Sounds like fun. On the other side of the lake from me, Brian's over in Michigan. Yes, and yeah, Brian mentions Govee too. Yeah, that's a good point. There's the MQTT standard of events and stuff. You could potentially, so you can already do it in Home Assistant. Great. And I imagine but I get where Brian's coming from. Like, it'd just be nice if that became something that Matter could do across a lot more of these lights and a lot more of these systems. It'd be nice to be able to trigger some of these with your HomePods, and Nanoleaf does have a interesting workaround, where what Nanoleaf does for this, if you're not familiar, is they integrate with Apple HomeKit, and they create scenes in your Apple Home. And then when that scene turns on for that particular light, that light knows, oh, I'm turned on for this scene, therefore I'm going to do this lighting effect, not whatever else there is. And it can easily get overridden if you're not careful, like by going into that scene and modifying one of those properties, like let's say the light brightness or color or something. Then it's gonna potentially overwrite that Nanoleaf lighting effect. But it is a cool aspect if you're into Apple Home that's unique to Nanoleaf, because Govee doesn't integrate direct with Apple Home, and I don't know about Twinkly if Twinkly does that same thing. I haven't used any Twinkly lights. I just haven't really been into doing holiday lights that so I haven't gotten into Twinkly, but maybe next holiday season, this year, by the time Christmas lights and all that stuff rolls around, I'll be interested in Twinkly this year. But so far I haven't had the time or chance or really the interest to get into Twinkly lights. So I can't tell you about those. Oh yeah, the Matter. I need to do some more reading on this. I've heard that the HomePods are left out of it, but I don't really understand all the details. So I'm a little bit behind in catching up on the Matter audio standard. But yeah, I know it's a thing. I've heard about it. That's as much as I can say right now. Okay, so Twinkly does do the scene watching, I guess. But I guess their Home Assistant integration is a better way to control them. Interesting. Some good thoughts on Twinkly over there in the chat. But let's see. With that, I had some other topics I wanted to get to. Open up my... So just a quick public service announcement. A couple different public service announcements. One, if you are using an Apple TV, which you probably are if you're watching this stream, not necessarily to watch this stream, but you probably have Apple TVs in your house, go turn on the Snoopy screensaver if you haven't already. I didn't think there was anything Apple could do beyond aerials that would just up the level of Apple TV screensavers. Aerials, they're sort of slow motion drone footage of different landscapes around the world, is really fun to watch. And I love that Apple just continues to add more of those, and it's a really cool visual. But if you're not really opposed to Snoopy for some reason, it's hard not to love Snoopy, but if even if you remotely like Snoopy, just turn on that screensaver for a little while. It's really fun. It's fun. I found myself this past weekend, just watching it for a little bit and enjoying the different scenes that it has. And they update the scenes and they change periodically and kind of fit with. It seems like they might even be fitting some of that with the weather and stuff. But yeah, highly recommend the Snoopy scenes, Snoopy screensavers on Apple TV, and you should go turn them on if you haven't already. So. Oh, hey. Thanks, Cass, for tuning in. Finally had a chance to catch a live stream. Great to see you. Yes, all is well. So, yes. Thank you, Brian. This is my next topic on my list that I want to mention is Flick Duo. So, Flick is the button company based in Sweden. They're Bluetooth based, but then they can be very tiny buttons, and they have the Flick Twist, which they sent me a while ago. And now they have their new Flick Duo is available for pre-order for batch 1. And it went on pre-order, I think it was Tuesday morning of this past week. And it looks like they still have some of their more expensive batches available. for pre-order. So if you want to still get into the June release date, they still have a few like power user options available. But I think a lot of their other early bird options are sold out. I went ahead and ordered just one Flick Duo to check out for the channel. They might be able to send me a sample earlier than that, but I'm not 100% sure. So I went ahead and ordered one. So when June timeframe comes around, I'll certainly be checking it out. Playing with it at CES, I thought it was a cool button. I think it's a cool idea. As I mentioned in my video around CES, I'm a little concerned about all the different gestures they added to this. Like, I just want something on the wall with two buttons, you know, like this whole thing right here, like they're showing where you can press and hold and turn. Like, it's nice that they gate it sort of behind the press and hold. Like, I think that's clever so that people can't accidentally do this. But I just don't see like how much. I would rather have the thing cost like $10 less. They could probably still make a nice margin on it and not have that feature. But it is what it is, you know, so it's going to be, I think it's $60 for one retail price, and it's with the pre-orders were $50. And right now, you know, you're getting, so let's see, 4 and then a bunch of clamps and stickers. Or, anyways, you can do the math on that. But I remember for my pre-order for one was $50. So, kind of expensive, kind of on the expensive side for a button. Not bad for two buttons, but they're two buttons in the same unit. So we'll see. I'm interested to see how it performs. Yeah, more on that. It is kind of weird though that they did this pre-order so far in advance. I mean, not shipping until June, but you pay for it now. Just seems a little interesting, but I guess that really helps them cover the cost of manufacturing. So yeah, I'd love to hear in the chat. Are any of you guys really into the Flick Duo? Excited about it? Did you pre-order? Just interested once it comes out? So love to hear that. In the meantime, well, if any of you guys are chiming in there on the chat, we have a good question from William on robot vacuums. I started my parents down the smart home journey. Really want to get them a smart mop and vacuum. Any recommendations? So yeah, there's like some stuff I can't say right now about some of this stuff, but just based on like what we saw at CES, I thought that Ecovacs had some really cool stuff. Ecovacs has traditionally been a kind of a pioneer in the mopping space and adding new tech. So I'm going to be playing with, you know, I don't know. I can't really say what because actually like, anyways, I don't know at this point what I have to say conclusively about their mopping tech per se, but I think they have some cool things coming this year, and so does Narwhal. Narwhal had some really interesting demos at CES with their vacuums with the mops. The new tech from CES this year is really the mops that sort of, in a way, clean themselves inside the vacuum, right? So it's a roller for the mop that then goes back up into the vacuum. It gets cleaned and then goes back down, so that the challenge is, of course, if you have a spill of, you know, their demo at CES for, I think it was Narwhal, was soy sauce, but, you know, it could be any kind of sauce or liquid, whatever on the floor. If you have a traditional robot mop with the spinning mops, which I'm pretty sure Ecovacs pioneered back in the day, like it works for a lot of cases, but when you have, and even like a lot of modern robot vacs, like my video of the Dreamy X40 Ultra, sponsor review I did, or sponsored, not review, showcase of that vacuum this past fall, that cleaned up milk, no problem, right? Like, and so there's plenty of liquids that these things can handle as it is. The self-cleaning is kind of accomplishing a smaller percentage of the use cases, but I still think it's cool tech to keep an eye on. So, but that said, I mean, that's going to be coming into the high-end Matter compatible in certain cases vacuums that are probably, I don't know, might be more than you want to spend on a vacuum for like, let's see if this is helpful for someone in my family, right? Maybe it is in your budget, maybe it's not. So from there, I would say probably one of the, we still have the, if you're going to go with Ecovacs, we still have the T30S combo, which I mentioned in my home awards. I still think that's a really good vacuum. So yeah, the Deebot T30S, they have the T30S combo, which I really like because it has a handheld vacuum with it. So it's nice. You just always have that there charged, but you might not need that. So then, you can get the T30S on its own. And the T series from Ecovacs tends to be a little bit more on the affordable end. Their X series. And by the way, for what it's worth, Ecovacs is not sponsored content on my channel, but they have given me all the vacuums I've talked about on my channel. So the T30S would probably be one to look at, but I forget the name of their other series. Is it the X series? Yeah. So like the X2, the X8, X5, all those ones are going to be Ecovacs, like more high-end series, and the T series is going to be their lower end ones. They also announced at CES their T50X or T50 Max, which has like much more suction. So there's actually some new tech coming there. So that could be an option that I would strongly consider. Another one I'd also look at is the Roborock series. Of course, the Saros is their new high-end ones. But if we go to their S8 Max, S8 Max V Pro Ultra, I think it is. Maybe it's just their S8 Pro Ultra now. Yeah, so this is the one that my parents have. And I got it from Roborock to review a number of years ago and then just set them up with it after that. And it's worked well for them. And I think it would still, new today, work well. It's going to be a little bit less than, maybe the latest and greatest from Ecovacs or Roborock. So I think Roborock tends to have pretty good, let's see what their store says for the price. All right, so $900. So still expensive, but not $2,000. So I would look at the S8 series. There's a Max V Ultra. I did a review of this vacuum previously on my channel. I think it was back in 2023. And these mops are not quite as good as the rotating mops, the Vibra Rise ones that just kind of sweep across the floor, but they're still something better than no mopping. And then the suction of the dual rollers is really cool. So those would be my thoughts on vacuums. So enough on that. I went kind of long on that question, but hopefully that points you in the right direction. I do think for, let's say, it's, we all get older, mobility issues set in. I know my parents might, have some of those issues. It's just nice to be able to have something that can do some kind of vacuuming, cleaning, because if you can't get up as much, then you end up, your house just ends up getting dirtier, and to have a robot to take care of some of that. It's not going to be as good as a human, but all these robots these days are so smart compared to where they started. And so I think even if you're used to robot vacuum technology from like 5 years ago, it's like the leaps they take every year forward. It's like these AI models that I've been in the news lately of just like every 3 months, there's a new robot vacuum that's just like so much better than the previous ones in one particular way or multiple ways. And it's just one of those industries. So, okay. So yeah, I got the Roborock Q-Revo Curve. Cool. Yeah, it has a no tangle. That's another feature to look out for some of these. I'd also say, by the way, another vacuum that has been pretty good for us is the Dreamy X40 Ultra, but I really like right now. I think the Ecovacs or Roborock, I think both have really good options. And yeah, all of the vacuum companies these days, either as an option, additional on the vacuum, or with the model have some kind of a anti-hair tangle brush thing. And that can reduce some of your like suction capability for like getting crumbs off the floor, but it can better handle pet hair and human hair. So just something to consider as you look at these options. Definitely a feature to keep an eye out for as a positive, I think. Cool. Thanks, William. And yeah, so one of the other things I wanted to so let's see, are there any Flick Duo? You're buttonless, Ratchet Gang. Okay, well, you need to get some buttons. Buttons are the way of the future. Garrett's is another vote for the Snoopy screensaver we talked about earlier. Yeah, and that's a good point, Ratchet Gang. I've read some headlines and haven't really dug into it. There apparently are some ways you can try and get the Snoopy screensavers on your Mac, but I think it's more complicated. There's the Arial screensaver app for Mac that does the basically a way to get the screensavers on your Mac, but now, of course, Apple's put them into Mac OS, so you don't even need to bother with that. And I think it's great, great fun as well. Yeah, and my kids, I see some comments about kids loving the screensavers, Snoopy screensavers. My kids love the Snoopy screensavers too. So they're fun to put on for the whole family. Yeah, new Apple TV. I haven't heard anything about this coming soon. I feel like it's hard to predict not only when Apple's going to release something, right, but like how and exactly when. But it seems like a lot of this stuff is coming second half of this year. Maybe we'll see some stuff at WWDC, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those years where we don't hear anything from Apple about smart home tech until some fall event. And what Apple does as an event might be sort of evolving over time. They had with the Macs was an interesting introduction this year with the Macs where they had daily drops of YouTube videos that were short. And then they had a big creator event in LA where they got a bunch of creators out to like see the Macs in person, like as after those videos had all posted. And then of course reviews after that. So we'll see what Apple does in terms of actually introducing those. But my hunch is that we might see a bunch of their smart home and TV related updates all in one sort of clump together in September, October, maybe as late as November, but probably September or October of this year. Maybe they connect it with the iPhone event, but maybe not between Apple Watch, iPhone, and AirPods. There's already so much to talk about there. And if then they're also going to have a new Apple TV, new HomePod, new doorbell, new smart home display, like that sounds like more than people could comprehend in one event. So I don't know. We'll see. But that's last I heard. But I haven't read all the latest rumors from this week. I'm a little behind on the news right now. So one of the other things I wanted to hear your thoughts on, a lot of you guys are pretty smart in the chat. I mean, you're all smart. You're watching my live stream, right? Great use of your time. But is how you're using AI. Because, of course, we had the DeepSeek model come out last week and then a lot of news around that. And, of course, AI is a topic du jour, and I think it's kind of adjacent to smart home tech. I think from the smart home angle, it's exciting to see DeepSeek step forwards in efficiency because I think it's along the path towards something like that being available as a voice assistant in your home, right? Because it could run on some kind of embedded system in your home and might not have to call out to the cloud so much. And I don't know if and when Apple would be able to take advantage of that on one of their home devices. But I just think like things are moving in a good direction there, to the point where hopefully the assistants that help us run our smart homes can become much smarter, because as these models get more refined and distilled, and the process with how they do inference can be made smaller. I'm optimistic that will just continue, and we'll see. That's aside from the whole conversation about the model itself from DeepSeek and all the details there. This is not an AI show, so I don't want to get into that. But I've been using AI a lot myself, just to. I mean, there's the coding side of it, right? Like, it's really good at coming up with code. I don't just blanket use code from AI for anything, or for writing as well. But it can be really nice to give you alternate ideas, sort of fill in gaps that are really predictable stuff, like, oh, this piece of code just needs to be written. It's a very standard thing. Like, let's just ask AI to write it in the context of this. And that can be really handy. I've also been using more and more, some of these services have ways they can go out and search for you on the web. I find that so much better than Google search for a lot of things, like just to compile things like links for this show, keeping up with the news or stuff, or also, finding out what's the latest on a particular product or category, seeing what it suggests for product advice, like, oh, thinking of getting a robot vacuum, let's say, like, well, what options are out there and that reviewers have been speaking well of, and things like that. I mean, it doesn't replace a human. Like, I think, for product reviews, I'd still want to watch like a YouTube video with a creator telling me what they think about it. But I think, I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say of like ways you find it useful. Oh, cool. For bourbon recommendations. That's a great point. Yeah. Nothing to do with smart. Yeah. But I mean, it's, I have heard of other people, Brian, if you can tie it into Home Assistant, and there've been some, explorations around, GPT ways to control, not in the OpenAI sense, but just in the, general, general purpose transformer, I think it is. Yeah. A transformer style model, sort of AI used in a smart home context. But yeah, it's great for, I'm sure, bourbon recommendations and just a lot of those like day-to-day decisions or research, giving you ideas. I also think of it too, like world leaders and CEOs of big companies probably have people or groups of people on their team who will write draft speeches for them, or, oh, during this speech, you should talk about this, right? And I've also used it to kind of brainstorm ideas in that way of like, all right, obviously I'm never going to be someone who has a speech writer or a team of speech writers, but like, based on these parameters, what should I talk about, in particular thing? And it can sometimes come up with some ideas. And of course, it's like, how Uber was everybody's private driver, so to speak. At first, this can be like everybody's speechwriter, or everybody's writing coach. It can also be nice for that. Like, I also find it really nice for work stuff too, because we use a lot of Gemini at work, finding action items out of meeting transcripts or also notes about meetings. It can be nice also for the reverse of like taking some short bullet points and then formally putting it into some nice clean documentation that's kind of in a standardized format, and answer some standardized questions about that particular decision or thing. So that can be also really nice depending on your company's AI policies and what you're allowed or not allowed to use. But yeah, I'm going to get some questions here, and I have some yeah, it's a good point, Garance. Like, deliberately avoid using AI for coding because it's not clear what the situation is with the copyright. That's a good point. I mean, I don't copy and paste anything from AI into my coding per se, but it's like, and if it is, it's like changed so much that it's not AI code at that point. But it can be nice to sort of jumpstart things, especially, another thing I really like about it too is like there can be times where you're jumping into, and this is, I'm sorry for the non-developers here watching, but like just a quick aside, like if you're jumping into a part of code and whatever kind of code you write, that's you haven't done in a while. And you're like, I remember there's like this thing I need to do, but what's the API I need to call for it? And what does it look like? And usually in the past, I might Google for that and find some blog post explaining like the basics of something, read through the blog post and kind of suss out from it, oh yeah, it's this thing I need to call and it needs to be structured this way. And it can be nice with AI because you can be very specific on your circumstance of why you need to use this thing. And then just have your memory quickly jogged about all the details right there without having nearly as many clicks. And you just get straight to like an answer. Like I feel terrible for all the amazing people out there who might lose then my page views, right? Who make those great blogs about different programming languages and YouTube videos as well about programming. Like, and I still think there's definitely a place for those people. I don't want, AI to replace them or, their work. But for certain cases, I think it can be really handy to use AI for some of that stuff. So, there's a question up here I want to get to. A couple questions here. So let's get to this one from really quickly back to Johnny. So, Andrew O'Hara from Apple Insider talked to a number of router manufacturers at CES last year, and they said that they're basically not working with Apple with the HomeKit router program, and the Apple's not really active in that program anymore. So I don't know if and when Apple would ever like come out and say that it's gone. Maybe they'll resume it at some point, but I've considered it since then. It's just basically gone. Maybe we'll hear more news about it, but I certainly wouldn't go out there looking for a HomeKit router and trying to get something. I even found back in the day, well, I liked the premise from Apple. I think practically speaking, it's difficult because all of that security and limited network access you're giving those devices, it's making it more challenging for those devices to work well in that scenario. And like HomeKit router, at least at the time, probably wasn't ever going to grow to the size where these companies would feel like, all right, we have to have a HomeKit router set up and we have to make sure our product works well in HomeKit router in the different circumstances of like just accessing your local network, just accessing the internet, no local network, like all those different settings you could do in HomeKit router, like make sure our product works and all that before we ship it. I don't think companies would ever do that. So then you're introducing a lot of chance for unreliable products in your smart home. So, I love the privacy angle of HomeKit router. I don't think it practically would ever work well. So who knows? Maybe Apple has some cool new ideas about it and we'll see it get kind of relaunched, but I would just consider it gone. I mean, it's not officially gone, but don't look for routers with that. And I wouldn't count on anything coming anytime soon. And then there's one from Will up here. Really loved your CES video. Thanks, Will. Thanks. Sorry. I quickly read that and thought there was a question involved in that, but thank you, Will. It was fun I really enjoyed that. My first video I did on CES went out on Thursday morning, and that was more just like quick through the news, like, what's going on at CES, quick summary. But it was fun to do that sort of more like investigative reporter news segment kind of thing about CES for the second one. So I'm glad you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun putting that one together. So Garen's saying I'll be interested in the Flick Duo. Hopefully it comes. Yeah, I agree. Hopefully they'll get the price down. Maybe a sale or two, a Prime Day or a Black Friday sale, something like that. But I I think that it's going to be interesting for Flick because they've done some really clever engineering things around not only just supporting the Matter spec, but also like how in order to use some of their custom controls in Matter, like you can then use the Flick Hub as a Matter controller. So then that allows you to do sort of more custom controls from Flick buttons to their Matter controller, which then talk to your devices. Of course, you have to connect your devices via like multi-admin over to your Flick Hub. So it's a few more steps to set up. But I think Flick has been very creative and very innovative in their space. I just think, though, at the same time with Matter, there's so many companies that are going to be making various products that have Matter buttons inside of them or are Matter buttons that are less expensive. Like, I hope Flick continues to be able to innovate to the point where people are willing to pay for their products, because I think they make good stuff. But I worry about, is there a world where they're able to are they able to survive in the future? I mean, I hope so, because I love them as a company. I see no signs of them having trouble, but I just look at like what's happening in the smart home world, and I fear they might have a lot of challenges ahead. But I don't know. I hope not. Hey, Waterball 365, good to see you here. Was there a release date in the new Caseta shades? They're shipping now, and you can pre-order. I think they start delivering in February, I think it is. But yeah, I mean, you could, at CES, week of CES, you can go to their website. It's a little confusing because they still have Serena shades, so that's a separate website. But you can go to, I think it's CasetaWireless.com, because Lutron has a bunch of different brands. Of course, they have higher end brands that we don't really talk about as much here on the channel. But yeah, if you just go to, they got their Super Bowl stuff coming here, but under products, I think it is, they have smart shades. Yeah, so then you can go ahead and design and buy and pre-order. Orders will start shipping in mid-February. Yeah, so coming soon. There's your literal answer. So, has anyone... Okay, good questions, Edgar, about the SwitchBot. I want to get to this. I have a bone to pick about this. So, has anyone integrated the new SwitchBot K10 Plus Pro combo into HomeKit through Matter? I don't see the option in the app. I have not done the K10 Plus Pro combo, but I wanted to take this comment also to, if anybody has, this is firmware 1.1.011 from Edgar. So I don't have that combo version. I just have the regular K10 Plus Pro, and it's in Matter just fine. But as a light switch in Apple Home, so it's not really like a full vacuum. It's not, whatever's potentially going to be turned on with 18.3 or 18.4 from Apple. None of that. But this thing, here's my SwitchBot K10 Pro Plus. Anyways, I love the idea SwitchBot has with these smaller vacuums. And I was talking to them about this at CES, but it's just, the problem is this vacuum it's like a little kid, in that it's like small enough that it can get itself into more trouble than a bigger vacuum. And by that I mean that it will like get under my office chair or get stuck in random places. I used to have it clean my office every single night, just a quick vacuum around the room while I was sleeping, because this is down in the basement, so any vacuuming here is not going to wake anybody up upstairs. But it was just like getting stuck so much and so often in so many different places in my office that I just turned it off. And I haven't decided what I want to do with the K10. Now, SwitchBot tells me that they're newer vacuums. I've done the updates to the firmware, and I still haven't seen any improvements for that. SwitchBot tells me that their newer vacuums are going to be better at this and not have as many issues. So maybe we'll try those out and see if it's better. I think it's an issue where maybe they could add some more sensors on the device, and that would be a fix for it. But yeah, I love the SwitchBot concept there. I mean, SwitchBot's so creative as a company. And they have the, that cool new air purifier and like platform that then is coming later this year. The air purifier, I think, already shipped. But But yeah, it's just something to call out. And as you're thinking about robot vacuums, I would steer away from some of these smaller SwitchBot ones in a lot of cases, just because their size makes them so small that they can get themselves into trouble that should probably avoid. So speaking of SwitchBot, one of the things they gave me recently was their carbon dioxide sensor, which the carbon dioxide part of it doesn't really come into Apple Home, but it has a bunch of other room air quality stuff like humidity and temperature. But it's saying that as I've been sitting here for the past hour with the door closed, just blowing hot air, that has risen the CO2 level. So I've gone from like the green part of it to now it's like 1146 is my number right now for that. It's in the yellow. So, and I do notice that. I mean, I've added some ventilation in this room, but it's still like, it's something to keep in mind if you work from remotely, like from home, and you have an office where you close the door. I mean, an office building, of course, they're going to do a lot to make sure it's ventilated, but in a home, you might not have the best ventilation in a particular area. And if you're like talking on meetings or even just breathing all day, you're going to fill your room with CO2, and that can really impair your brain, your judgment. It just gives you a headache, makes you feel more tired. It's just not good for you. So I'm going to be talking more probably about the SwitchBot CO2 monitor very soon. But yeah, it's just like a great product from SwitchBot. Not really as much smart home related, because I think the most valuable part of it is just having this screen there to tell you how much CO2 is in the air. It can't be the most accurate sensor, but I find at least within itself, it seems to be pretty accurate. So very cool thing, especially if you have a home office or something like that where you want to keep an eye on the CO2 and then know like, oh, I just open the door or blow a fan or whatever. Would be nice to be able to connect that to more automations in Apple Home. You have some options in SwitchBot, but yeah, something to consider. So my Eggers is constantly higher than 1400 ppm. Interesting. Even with the door open. So yeah, I think some of it also varies too, like where you live. And I also imagine some of these units aren't like super accurate relative to other instances of them, that it's more like something that's accurate within its own measurements, right? So I don't know, maybe 1146 might be really good for somebody with one of these, but for me, it seems to be high. So I don't know, just something to keep in mind. Oh, cool. But then, okay, so you open the windows. Good. It's good to know that you're not living in like a polluted area right outside your home, Edgar, with like lots of CO2. But yeah, that's down to the 600s. Nice. Yeah. If I come in here in the mornings and, it's been empty in here all night, like, yeah, it will have definitely dropped down to like 600 something for me as well. So maybe that's a sign it's more accurate than I'm giving it credit for. But we've been going for over an hour. A lot of great discussion here, guys, and good to catch up. I always leave you with a video to watch at the end of the streams. And this one is, if you have been hearing about AI and thinking like what to use it for, I have two videos. One's more smart home related and one's not. So the one that's not is this one from Jeff Su, who's a great productivity channel. And he has just a great primer on some of like getting started with AI and what to do with it. That I think if you sort of hear a bunch of people talking about using AI and chatbots, like how do I get started? Like he has a good primer on that stuff. Now the other one is a video from Paul Hibbert on smart home, the Aqara S1, which is shipped in Europe, and I think will be very similar to what ships in the US. And so it's a video sponsored by Aqara, and I think it's a really good look at what is this new display from Aqara, the S1, going to be like. And maybe you viewer live in Europe and you can go get it. But yeah, if you're in the US and excitedly awaiting our US version of it sometime in the future, I think this is a cool video to check out. So that's from Paul Hibbert over at Hibbert's Home Tech. So thanks again so much for tuning in here. I hope you enjoy one of those videos or something else on YouTube. And have a great rest of your night. And see you this weekend with more content and next week with the live stream. Bye.